Today we're going to discuss human evolution and the geographic distribution of various human species. Human evolution is a highly complex topic that many people might know little or nothing about. Before diving deeply into our ancestors, I'd like to address some widespread misconceptions. Surveys show that roughly 30% of Americans don't believe evolution is real and dismiss the idea that humans evolved from apes as absurd. In reality, we are apes, and we did evolve from ancestral apes. Let's examine that famous March of Progress image often associated with human evolution. Although it might seem logical, it is actually an inaccurate representation of how evolution works. A far better model would depict a branching tree. While imperfect, since not all human species have been discovered, it offers a more accurate overall understanding. Evolution is not linear, unlike what the first model implies. Instead, multiple branches of hominids coexisted. People skeptical about evolution often ask, if humans exist today, why do chimpanzees still exist? The answer is that chimps belong to a separate branch of the hominid lineage. They are not our direct ancestors. Humans and chimpanzees last shared a common ancestor about 7 million years ago, after which each lineage diverged and evolved separately. Therefore, humans did not evolve from chimps, but rather from an older common ancestor that was not anatomically chimpanzee. A common argument raised by creationists concerns the so-called missing link, the claim that there are too many gaps in the hominin family tree for it to be taken seriously. This argument is flawed in many ways. Paleontologists recognize that discovering every single specimen is impossible. Gaps will remain until more species are uncovered. For example, Charles Darwin once speculated that whales evolved from land animals millions of years ago. In The Original Origin of Species, he suggested that whales might have evolved from a bear-like creature that hunted in the water. Although he wasn't entirely accurate, we later discovered that whales did, in fact, come from land-dwelling animals, and we've since found multiple transitional species. While we haven't identified every single species in that evolutionary chain, it's now widely accepted that whales descended from wolf-like land mammals. The same concept applies to human evolution. We may not have discovered every species in our lineage, but the fossil record shows clear evidence of how our jaws gradually became smaller, while our brains increased in size. This evidence strongly supports the conclusion that humans are apes, and that we evolved from other apes. Humans did not suddenly appear to dominate the Earth, as many religious stories suggest. Instead, our ancestors gradually developed larger brains, weaker bodies, smaller jaws, and most importantly, a greater intelligence over time. In this video, I will primarily focus on the evolution and distribution of the genus Homo. I won't be covering our more ape-like ancestors, as those are discussed in other videos within this playlist. Homo habilis is the oldest known species in the genus Homo. Its name means handy man, as it was once believed to be the first hominid species to use stone tools, though this claim is now debated. Homo habilis is considered an intermediate species between Homo erectus and Australopithecus. There has been scholarly debate over whether Homo habilis should be classified as an Australopithecine or a hominin, but for now, it is still regarded as a hominid species. Despite being a hominin, it retained many ape-like traits. Modern humans have flat faces, but that is a trait that evolved over millions of years. The jaws of Homo habilis protruded from the face and were more heavily built. The skull was also more robust and featured a thick brow ridge. Males stood around 4 feet tall on average, while females were smaller, typically in the 3-foot range. They weighed around 70 pounds and were more sturdily built than modern humans. They were likely hairy, like chimpanzees, although they may have had slightly less hair, similar to later species. Their brain size was less than half that of a modern human, but it was twice the size of an Australopithecines. While Homo habilis was significantly more intelligent than its predecessors, it was still far less intelligent than modern humans. This species lived along the eastern regions of Africa. Africa is undeniably the birthplace of humankind and of countless other species. These small 4-foot-tall ape men were far from unintelligent. In fact, their brains were slightly larger than those of modern chimpanzees, and we know they were significantly more intelligent due to their ability to craft stone tools. Most people don't realize that making stone tools is actually quite complex. Even locating the right kind of stone to produce sharp flakes can be a challenge. Eventually, a population of Homo habilis evolved into an early form of Homo erectus. These early variants were once called Homo ergaster, though today they are generally considered to be an early stage of Homo erectus. It's important to note that habilis and erectus coexisted, possibly for as long as 500,000 years. Anatomically, Homo erectus was far more advanced than Homo habilis. Some of the earlier erectus specimens had brain volumes of about 850 cubic centimeters, while later individuals, like the so-called Java man, had brain volumes of 1,100 cubic centimeters or more. For comparison, modern Homo sapien males have an average brain volume of 1,260 cubic centimeters, while Homo sapien females average about 1,130 cubic centimeters. To be clear, I'm not suggesting that women are less intelligent than men, quite the opposite. We all recognize that women are equally capable when it comes to cognitive abilities. But it's astonishing that these ancient ape men had brain sizes roughly equal to that of a modern Homo sapien female. However, despite the similar size, modern humans almost certainly have far more complex and advanced brains. Now that you understand how capable these early humans were, let's talk about what they achieved. While Homo habilis was confined to Africa, Homo erectus was so successful that it spread across much of the world. Its range extended from northern China to parts of southern Europe, representing the most distant migrations from its African origins. This species truly dominated its environment and survived for hundreds of thousands of years. Since all species in the Homo genus are considered human, this means that humanity itself is ancient. As far back as 2 million years ago, these intelligent ape men walked the earth. Their lives must have been filled with struggle, survival, and astonishing resilience. Beyond their wide territorial range, Homo erectus holds another distinction. It was the first known species to use and control fire. At an East African site called Chesawanja, archaeologists discovered fire-hardened clay fragments that had been exposed to temperatures around 752 degrees Fahrenheit, 400 degrees Celsius. The Chesawanja site, and a few others, suggests that early humans first started using fire as early as 1.5 million years ago, and they were definitely using it by 1.3 million years ago. They were also the first species to craft stone handaxes. These tools were made from large workable stones like flint. A handaxe would have been the all-purpose tool of their time, the equivalent of a modern pocket knife. It was likely used for self-defense, preparing food, making other tools, hunting, and many other tasks. Incredibly, you can actually purchase authentic handaxes made by Homo erectus online for about $300. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely planning to buy one someday to hang above the fireplace in my future home. How amazing will it be when someone one day asks me why there's an oddly shaped rock displayed in a glass case, and I get to answer, because one of our distant ape-man ancestors used that very rock 1.7 million years ago to butcher an animal in what is now northern France. Whether my claim is entirely accurate or not is debatable, but the fact remains, an ancient human crafted that tool and used it in daily life. Just having the opportunity to own something like that would be incredible to me. Anyway, I went off on a bit of a tangent, but you get the point. Homo erectus made handaxes, and the later, surviving members of the species even developed stone-tipped spears and more sophisticated tools. This species also holds the record for creating what may be the oldest known drawing or piece of art. A 500,000-year-old shell was discovered alongside a skullcap in Indonesia during the 1890s. It had peculiar geometric markings carved into it, clearly etched with a very hard and sharp tool. Homo erectus must have used a precision stone implement to make those carvings. To me, as a modern Homo sapien, an English speaker, the shape resembles the letter M, though of course that wasn't the intended meaning. Perhaps it was religious, decorative, artistic, or just a random doodle. Whatever its purpose, there's no doubt it was created intentionally hundreds of thousands of years ago by one of our ancient ancestors. Homo erectus is one of my favourite species in the genus Homo, both because of its achievements and because of how long it managed to survive on Earth. It first appeared about 2 million years ago and only went extinct around 70,000 years ago. You might be wondering, how did they go extinct only 70,000 years ago, when Homo sapiens evolved 350,000 years ago? The answer is simple. They coexisted. There are 8 recognised species in the Homo genus, and many more proposed species and subspecies. These populations evolved and intermingled across Europe and Asia, creating a tangled web of ancient human lineages. Rather than go in depth into each species, I'll give you a timeline overview showing when and where these species appeared and lived across the globe. Let's begin. Around 2.3 million years ago, Homo habilis lived in East Africa. Then 300,000 years later, the first Homo erectus evolved. Fossil evidence suggests that Homo erectus did not leave Africa until about 1.8 million years ago, after which they spread across the globe, throughout Africa, into southern Europe, and much of Asia. It wasn't just one species during this time. Multiple human species existed around the world. One of these likely evolved into the proposed species Homo antecessor around 1.2 million years ago. Though still debated, Homo antecessor appears to be a transitional form between Homo erectus and Homo heidelbergensis. Regardless, the next major evolutionary step was Homo heidelbergensis. This species likely evolved from Homo antecessor in either Europe or the Middle East, and went on to spread throughout Europe and Africa. It emerged around 700,000 years ago and persisted for a considerable period of time. As of 700,000 years ago, Homo erectus was still alive and thriving in various parts of the world. Meanwhile, Homo heidelbergensis was present in East Africa and southern Europe. These two species likely coexisted and perhaps even clashed violently, much like the scenes in the film Quest for Fire, which, by the way, is an excellent movie I highly recommend you all watch. The next species to evolve were the infamous Neanderthals. Neanderthals, or Neanderthals, first appeared approximately 430,000 years ago. Interestingly, their brains were actually about 25% larger than those of modern humans. However, despite the larger brain size, we know they weren't as intelligent. Much of their brain volume was devoted to sensory processing rather than higher cognitive function. Neanderthals were shorter and stockier than modern humans, a body type that helped them conserve heat in the cold climates where they lived. Their range included much of Europe and parts of Westalasia. Something I personally enjoy imagining is what the world would be like if Neanderthals were still around today. I think they'd absolutely dominate combat sports like MMA, simply because they were much stronger and more muscular than modern humans. Anyway, the next species to evolve was Homo sapiens. We likely descended from an African branch of Homo heidelbergensis around 350,000 years ago. These early humans weren't yet anatomically modern, but they were very close to what we are today. At this point in time, Homo sapiens lived in Africa and a few other regions, although large-scale migrations hadn't yet occurred. Then came Homo naledi, the next species to evolve in Africa. Interestingly, it appears to have reverted to a more primitive form, resembling an Australopithecine more than a typical member of the Homo genus. It likely descended from a more archaic group of Homo erectus, evolving adaptations for a semi-arboreal, tree-dwelling lifestyle once again. So by around 300,000 years ago, there were 5 major known human species still living across the world. The next evolutionary development came about 150,000 years ago, with the emergence of Homo floresiensis. Often referred to as hobbits, these hominins stood only about 3.5 feet tall when fully grown. They lived on the island of Flores and likely evolved from a group of Homo erectus that had become stranded there. So now, going back 150,000 years, there were 5 distinct human species living on Earth. We still don't know the exact locations of every group, but they provide a general estimate. There are also many proposed species and fossil discoveries that haven't yet been fully analysed, which could completely change what we currently understand. Take Homo luzonensis, for example. It was discovered in 2007 from just a single finger bone, and it wasn't officially recognised as a species until just a few months ago. Now here's the final map I'll show you. This is what Earth likely looked like 70,000 years ago. As you can see, Europe and Asia were a confusing mix of different human populations. We still don't have clear information about the exact distribution of each group, or the extent of the interbreeding between Homo sapiens, Neanderthals and Denisovans. Over the millennia, these other species gradually disappeared, and by 30,000 years ago, only one human species remained, Homo sapiens. Yes, every human alive today is a Homo sapien, and no matter what some people might claim, humans are incredibly diverse in terms of skin tone, height, facial features and more, but we all belong to the same species. Interestingly, traces of Neanderthal and Denisovan DNA still exist in our genes, although in very small amounts. Our greater intelligence and advanced social behaviour helped us to outcompete these other human species, and in some cases interbreed with them. What truly amazes me is that no other species of Homo has survived to the present day. You'd think maybe some ancient tribe would have made it, but no, it's just us, Homo sapiens. There are no hidden groups of primitive humans living on distant islands. There's no Bigfoot lurking in the forests. Just us. The field of paleoanthropology is constantly evolving, and I'm genuinely excited to see what new discoveries the future holds. Maybe we'll even find evidence of late surviving Neanderthal populations, though honestly, that seems unlikely. Thanks so much for watching. I hope this video helped you learn something new about our ancient past. The key takeaway is this: humans have existed across the globe for an unimaginably long time, and our species has travelled far and wide. Make sure to check out the other videos in this playlist. Everyone involved put a lot of effort into creating them,